Let's talk about love and marriage, the way that God intended. Life experience, here we share it. The No Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. No Fruit Podcast. Will help your spirit transform.
We thank y'all very much for tuning in to the No Fruit Podcast. And we're going to have a special guest for you today. In 2017, this gentleman and his wife, Carrie, started Inspired Stewardship as a business to serve Christian men and couples that are struggling to live out their calling. They work to help align the way you use your time, your talent, and your treasure so that you can identify and live a fully authentic life that allows you to authentically live your calling, serve others, and provide for your family. As a certified human behavioral consultants and members of the John Maxwell team, they focus on helping you understand yourself, understand others, and through that, understanding, building the kingdom. After almost 30 years in education, they founded Inspired Stewardship to live out their own calling to coaching in 2011. This is now a full-time business offering assistance through one-on-one coaching, speaking, and workshops. And his book, Inspired Living, Assemble the Puzzle of Your Call by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures, was published by Morgan James in July 2nd, 2024. I thank y'all very much for listening to the No Fruit Podcast. I'm sorry, y'all, I almost messed up. I almost called it That Will Never Work. You know, doing too many things at one time. But, but I thank y'all very much.
Wait, no, that's your other identity.
I know, right?
That's your other identity.
I know, right? So, but I introduced to y'all Scott. Scott, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. It's always fun to listen to other people read your intro and sit there and go, wait. Yeah, that's me. Never mind.
So you said that in your bio, you and your wife started that business. What was it like first starting a business with your wife?
It really was fine. There was nothing big about it. A lot of times people think about that in terms of like, oh, we're going to have to work, we're going to work with our spouse. We're going to live together, be together 24/7. And I work from home. So, we really are together 24/7 anyway. But, what we found is that there were things that she could do, skills that she had, things that she was able to handle. And then there were things that I was able to do. And we kind of each had our giftings. We each had our strengths.
Right.
And so we could do things together and kind of divide labor, find ways that, she did things that lended themselves to her strengths. I did things that lended myself to my strengths. And over time, she's done less of some parts of the business and I've kind of taken on some more things, but not because there's been any friction or difficulties or anything. It's just as life has changed, that balance has changed. She now does a lot more volunteer work. She spends a lot more time with church. She does things like that, where I spend more time on the day-to-day of the business. So there's still things that she does to support and help the business. But the other factor is I call it our business, regardless of how much she does or I do or we do, because at the end of the day, she speaks wisdom into things that I do. I run ideas by her. She's part of the decision making. She's part of the direction. She's part of all of those things because we're partners in everything we do, whether it's business, whether it's personal, whatever it is. And so we kind of have that relationship too, where we can talk to each other and run things by each other regardless. So even if she wasn't on paper on the business, she'd be on the business,
I totally understand that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
No, it's just saying great. I think, we each have our own strengths and we have to play towards those and just appreciate that you have someone to lean on and to get that wisdom from and to run things by, because that's a great thing to have that partner in that way. So that's great, Scott.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think too, to kind of broaden it a little bit, because what you just said about having accountability and having people in your life and all of that is important. Whether you're married, whether you're single, kind of doesn't matter. You still need community around you. You still need to find a tribe of people. You need cheerleaders and you need butt kickers, right?
Right.
Yeah. Then I say about a spouse is you kind of get both in one.
Right.
A lot of times, you can have those people around you
Mm-hmm.
that you can bring into your life. And I'm a big proponent of finding virtual mentors, finding coaches, finding other people that you can plug in to different areas of your life. I tell people you need to create a board of directors, and these are the people that can speak into your life, support what you're doing, lend their intellect, their abilities, their advice, all of those sorts of things, their accountability to help you succeed. I don't care whether you're married or not. That's still a necessary step.
Right.
And I could attest to that because I'm in the same boat where I'm running the business every day. Kafa comes home and she's interjecting, "Hey Maurice, this is the best way we need to go." But I said it that way because in a lot of times it is probably 98, 99% of the time it's the best way to go, because sometimes I might be a little hard. So sometimes you need the softer side, you need the more loving side, the caring side, and you need to see that other viewpoint. So because hey, you know what? I'm going in one direction and not realizing, hey, this is really who our audience really is. And so we sometimes we really need that counterpart to say, hey, you know what? Consider this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And even there you need to find other voices that speak into our lives. I know for me, I'm a person of faith. I believe that God speaks into our life. That's the calling part of the book.
Right.
And this idea that, for me at least, a lot of times I hear the voice of God in the voice of other people.
Right.
In other words, God doesn't necessarily show up like, it's 2:00 in the morning, there's an angel at the foot of my bed going, "This is what you need to do."
Right.
It hadn't happened to me yet. Not saying it won't, but it hadn't happened to me yet. But I do hear where, I kind of got that inkling that maybe I need to be doing something. And then all of a sudden, just, coincidentally, air quotes around the word coincidence, people start speaking about it. It starts showing up in my life. I see it in messages that people are talking, people that I trust, my wife and others speak about it. And it's like, all right, I get it.
Right.
I need to listen.
Right.
Yeah, because it keeps coming back. You'll hear it from one person, and then you'll see something on television, and then you'll hear something in a song, and then somebody else will say it. It's like, wait a minute, this message just keeps resonating. I guess I should really pay attention and listen in a little bit, And it's tough sometimes, because when you're married, sometimes you do kind of steer away from the spouse at times.
Tune it out. Let's be honest. Selective hearing.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yes. So, as you were saying, when you hear it from others, then sometimes it's a little bit louder. It's a little stronger.
Right.
And it, can mean something.
Now, in my case, I've kind of learned to lean into my wife. I actually tell people openly that a lot of times my wife is the voice of God in my life. And I don't mean that in terms of she's a naggy, she's your bossy. That is not what I mean. Because a lot of times people hear that and they're like, oh, she just bosses you around. It's like, no, that's not what I mean at all. It's just she's got a much stronger intuition. She's much stronger in tune with things. She's got a lot of giftings where she's that kind of person that can walk into a room full of people and she'll like radar be like, that's the person that's, they don't feel very good. I need to go talk to them because they're hurting, and I'm like, how can you tell? You haven't even talked to them. And it's like, no, she knows, and she's never wrong. So I've learned to trust her intuition that if she's coming to me and saying, well, you need to hear this, you need to listen to this, I better listen to this because it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt if I don't. I don't mean she's gonna hurt me.
Right.
I mean I'm gonna screw up. And something's gonna go wrong if I don't listen to it.
That's powerful. That's good.
And it's funny that you're saying this because when Kafi and I first met, we met in church, and since then, pretty much. I mean, we've been married for almost 25 years now. Been together for almost 27, 28, whatever. And so. The whole time we've been together, she's been the prayer warrior. She's been the one that's been able to push and make sure that, hey, we're staying on track, that we're staying connected, that we're keep making sure that, hey, God is first. Now the roles are starting to change a little bit more. I'm seeing a little bit more frequently, recently, but she's definitely been the one to ground everything, to make sure that, hey, we're on point. And as you stated, she's also, because of that spirit of discernment, hey, you know what? These people, let's not walk that path. Let's go somewhere else. Those type of things. So I can definitely relate to that. I'm sorry, Kafi. I don't mean to keep,
It's fine. It's fine. I think my question for you, Scott, is, you said that there's benefit in having a community. And for our listeners, I think sometimes from what we're hearing with some of them, they don't have that community outside of church, and that's one place to go, yes. But past, 2020, some people are not going to places as frequently as they once did. And some of them are challenged with just, I guess, trusting and finding that community again. So what do you have to say in reference to how do we, in relationships, find a community, find people who are trustworthy that can lead us and guide us and inspire us and help us and be those good voices to us and for us?
So, the first step is going to be a little counterintuitive. So I actually talk about kind of 4 phases or frameworks or levels or steps of things. And the first one, and this is going to sound weird because you just asked about finding other people, is actually to start with yourself. And I think a lot of times we skip this step, but this is where doing some self-reflection, doing some deep work, finding out, where are the gaps? Where are my blind spots? What do I need to be building up? What am I searching for is important. Know yourself, right? Because if you don't, then a lot of times when you do find a community, you can kind of get sucked into a community that perhaps isn't as healthy as it wants to be, or is giving you, taking advantage of you in some way, or that sort of abusive type of relationship. And so there is some time and some energy and some effort to invest in yourself, is what I call it. That's the self-development. And remember, self-care, self-focus is not selfish. There's a difference, Selfish is I'm absorbed in myself and everything's about me. Self-care is I need to take care of myself because otherwise I can't show up for others.
Correct.
There's a very different focus of that. So the second step, and this is where kind of the finding community comes in, is to invest in others. So here's what I mean by that. A lot of times, again, we think only of what I need in terms of I need to get something.
Right.
It's we also tend to think of it as transactional. Well, I can't go ask this person that's further along than me for help because I have nothing to offer them.
Wow.
Well, the first thing is, believe it or not, like I have people in my business that send me clients and I haven't ever sent them a client. Right. And the people are like, well, why do they send you clients? I'm like, because when they send me a client, I treat that client good and I make them look good. That client calls them back up and it's like, thank you so much for bringing Scott in my life. Okay, that's worth something. So even though it's not transactional, it's not quid pro quo, it's value. And so we need to think bigger than just what can I give, what can I get, and think about a value that we can provide. And a lot of times out of providing value to others, you will find the connections that then provide value to you.
Yourself, yeah.
It's a weird thing, but if you find other people that you can help, out of that helping is every time I've done that, I've ended up networking and connecting to people that were further along than me, who saw me showing up and doing and helping and adding value and went, I need to invest in this person. I need to help this person along. Let me help them get further, because guess what? They're looking at what I'm putting value into. They're going, this is important to me too. If I can help this person, it makes it bigger. It makes it better. More people get help. There's more good in the world. And that snowball kind of starts rolling, because guess what? Eventually you work yourself up to be the person that has more influence, more knowledge, more impact. And now it's your turn to pay it forward and help other people along. So it's that constant cycle of building community. So it's a different way of looking at it than just, where can I show up that has people that I can get support from? I like to think first about where can I show up where I can also help others. Right. And out of that comes help for me. So it's different focus.
So I think in that, Scott, a lot of times we don't understand our true value, because we don't have that individual. Luckily, you and I are married, and we have that support system at home that can support us, that can lift us up when we're down, whatever it is, and vice versa, right? but some others may not have that. They may just be starting out in their relationship, or even if they're not in a relationship, maybe they didn't get that from their parents, whatever it is. So sometimes we don't have that reinforcement of that value. So how can someone find that if they haven't had it along the way?
You know, there's a little bit of figuring out kind of, you know, you're talking about the value that they have or the value you're adding. And you're right. Most people don't necessarily see it right away. And in fact, most of us have limiting beliefs or things that are kind of programmed into us from an early age, from things that happen to us. We tend to make things feel like and act like and be like, you know, this is the way it's always going to be. You know, life is always terrible. Yada, you know, we have those scripts. And so the first thing I want to say is that makes you human and normal if you have those thoughts. Okay. You're not weird. You're not broken. You're not bad. I was in a room full of about 500 very successful entrepreneurs. Every single one of these people ran a business. All of these businesses, you know, $1 million plus kind of businesses, nice houses, family, you know, successful people. Every measure of the world would look at these people and go, they're doing good.
Right, right.
And I said, how many of you have a voice in your head that talks to you, you know, in some way, either words or pictures or images, you know, that you hear something in your, every hand went up. I said, great. Keep your hand up if that voice is nice to you. And every hand went down. You know, we all have those internal dialogues. So part of what we have to do is, again, this is kind of that invest in yourself part, is step back and start identifying those thoughts, identifying those messages, identifying what shows up. And I call that finding the limiting beliefs. And then I like to try to turn those into what I call enabling truths. So this is where you look for evidence that disproves the truth of the statement. And it's a little easier to do than we think, because usually limiting beliefs are very absolutist statements. You know, I always fail. I call them the P's. They're personal. I am a failure. Okay. They're permanent. I always am a failure. And they're pervasive. I'm always a failure at everything. So it becomes an absolutist formula. And all you literally have to do is find one instance where you didn't fail at something and you just disprove that statement.
Right.
It cannot possibly be true if you've ever, you know, you got up and you tied your shoes successfully. Woohoo! You know, it's not true. So it's looking for those evidences and beginning to program your mind to say, whenever that limiting belief shows up, you got to respond with the truth. Wait a minute. That's not really true. I don't fail at everything. You know, I may have failed at this thing, but I don't fail at everything. And over time, you can begin to shift that. And then again, we're back to after you've been doing some of that is, again, in my experience, that's when the people start showing up that start reinforcing those enabling truths. Because here's the thing, if all you ever are is the limiting belief person, nobody wants to be around you.
Right.
You're a whiny victim. People hear, you know, that's what they perceive. That's not true, but that's what they perceive. But all of a sudden, if you start showing up and feeling a little better and acting a little better and driving a little better, people will show up and reinforce and build that up and lift you up in a way that lets you then move forward. And so it's kind of that there's feedback loops in your life, right? They're either negative feedback loops or positive feedback loops. So if you're in a negative feedback loop, you got to break it and eventually turn it back into a positive feedback loop.
Right.
So talk a little bit, because that's really good. And I think that's great personally, but how do we handle that in a relationship? How do we handle that in a marriage? How do we handle that? Because, it becomes contagious, you know, like, so if one person is in that negative space, it's rocking the whole house.
And it can happen in other relationships too. But for sure, you know, it can happen with your kids. It can happen with a parent and a child. It can happen with, you know, friends, you know, church, family, that kind of everything. So I think a lot of it is, so two things. One is be brave, go first. And what I mean by that is, the joking way to put it is, whoever is more mature in the relationship should make the first step towards fixing it. And the reason why I put it that way is everyone wants to say they're the more mature one.
Right.
Right? So no matter what, you get to go first because, obviously you're more mature than your spouse or the other person, right? So you get to go first. So it's the idea is be brave, go first, be vulnerable, share, talk, open up.
Mm-hmm.
This is also where sometimes, especially if this is something that could be medical or could be, going on for a long time or has come from past. I'm a big proponent of therapy. I'm a big proponent of getting professional help, doing all of those things that could come into this. But begin to go first and be the person that's vulnerable and saying, I feel like we're kind of in this bad cycle.
Right.
And we're in the crazy cycle and we keep digging the hole deeper. And I don't enjoy this. Are you enjoying this? And can we do something different? Can we try something different? And it doesn't fix it right away.
But it opens up that communication. Yeah.
But that's the best hope of starting to fix it.
Right.
And if you're not willing to do that, then nothing else is really going to work anyway, because otherwise you're just going to keep going back into those bad habit loops and digging the hole deeper.
Wow.
Scott, man, and I'm sorry, man, our time is short, but Scott, I have one question before I let you go.
Sure.
I'm not that mature, right? And I need some assistance with that. So how can I talk to you that might be a little more mature than me? Where can I reach out and talk to you and help me through this process?
So sure. I actually put together a page just for your listeners. So if you go over to inspiredstewardship.com/nofruit, so inspiredstewardship.com/nofruit. I've got some resources there. There's just some free things you can download, no obligation, no nothing. You're just gonna get them in email and have them delivered to you. There's also more information about my book there, my own podcast as well, and a lot of other things. And then there's actually a link there if you want to jump on a 30-minute call with me and just have a discussion. I do a lot of coaching in the areas. I call myself a stewardship coach, so time, talent, and treasures. And therefore, I'm never one of those coaches that it's not going to be a 30-minute call where it's like, and you've got to make a decision right now. You're going to sign it. Let's just have a chat. And if it's the right thing for us to do to work together, great. And if it's not, we'll have a chat and get to know each other. And maybe I can add some value in your life. And that's all good too.
Cool, man. I appreciate you coming on the show today. But Scott, just like you said earlier in the show, I got a whole nother life called That Will Never Work, right? And on that show, I had my Would You Rather question. Well, on this show, we're not going to have a Would You Rather question. Not that version of that. But I do have a ending question for you, Scott.
Okay.
If you could sing a duet with anyone, who would it be?
Ooh. Duet with anyone. So, okay. So I'll give you the answer, and then I have to explain it.
Sure.
Okay.
So my answer would be Aretha Franklin.
Wow.
Okay.
Good.
But here's why.
Good.
Because I'm horrible with pop culture and who people are and, all of that stuff. So I'm just one of those. I'm oblivious to it. I don't watch TV. If they're not in a movie, I don't really think about it. Because I do watch movies. I'm a cinemaphile. I love film, but I just really don't watch TV. Don't listen to the radio. Don't listen to. So one time at work when I was working in corporate, somebody said something about Aretha Franklin.
Okay.
And I immediately thought of Tina Turner.
Okay.
And thought that's who they were talking about. And it took me a little while to figure out that those are not the same thing.
No.
And so it embarrassed me to no end. They teased me about it. Pictures of Aretha Franklin and Tina Turner showed up in my office. This is not this person.
I know, right?
I got teased for that for a long time. So I'm gonna go with Aretha Franklin just because at least then I'd know who she was.
Right. Okay, yeah, no, that's cool, man. I appreciate that. Well, Scott, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Honored to be here.
Sure, thank you. And of course, thank y'all for listening to the Fruitful podcast. Continue to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we shall talk to y'all a little later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This week's episode has come to an end. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.